In the studio tonight to talk more on the anti-graft drive is the Executive Director of CISLAC, Auwal Musa. Good evening and welcome to our studio, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
You're very much welcome.
Thank you.
Going straight, diving into the questions, I'd like to ask, the fight against graft that, this present administration is relying on as one of its basic and strongest policies have been known to be faced with serious fight by corruption. The country is hearing that corruption is seriously fighting back, at this process. What can you say the anti-graft bodies are getting wrong?
Well, first and foremost, is just to tell you that really the fight against corruption in Nigeria is happening and is real, and therefore, this explains this team up, of corrupt, individual, with their associates to undermine the effort of the government to fight corruption. But we all know that the consequences of this corruption is what we have found ourselves: the dilapidated road, lack of amenities. There's no, teachers, you don't have school, you don't have, hospital, you don't have any, means of, infrastructural development that, would usher even development or even, attract investors. So these are all part of the consequences, and of course, the total collapse of morals and the integrity of Nigerians as a result of the corruption, because many people, especially the young people, they have no anybody to see as a mirror of good example. They only see looters. So therefore, even a young, child, will tell you he want to be elected official, he want to be in the assembly, he want to be governor, he want to be local government chairman, because what they see these people as, the exemplary, of corruption and looting. By the action they have, demonstrated. So I think there's a serious, consequences to it, and I think, every Nigerians, we should actually, team up to make sure that we fight this corruption. It's not the work of only EFCC or ICPC or Code of Conduct or Mr. President and the Vice President. It is our collective responsibility, because if there's no light, as we don't have, if there's no water, clean water, if our children can no longer, go to public school, or we can no longer go to, public hospital, it is all, of us that are suffering from it. So it's not about party, it's not about party. It is not about zonal person or tribal issue or religious issue. No, it is a general issue that affects each and individual of us. So the fight against corruption has to be holistic, has to be inclusive, participatory. Everybody must play a role, whether you are a security person, whether you are a journalist, whether you are a civil society, whether you are a politician, whether you are a contractor. Everybody must play a role, because the corruption has eaten us so deep that we have lost our value system in this country. So what the government in the last 2 years have been trying to do is to try to see how we can tackle this. While in doing that, we support, the effort and ensure that we clean and sanitize the system. So we are also urging other Nigerians to team up, not to see the fight against corruption, as some fight against some, maybe a particular, group of people, except they are crooks and criminals who have teamed up, from both north and south, Muslim and Christians, to exploit Nigerians, to bring the kind of, disgrace that we find ourselves. Both the Muslim and the Christian, the Northerners and the Southerners, they are all connived together to loot this country, and it is our responsibility to also, as Nigerians, irrespective of where we come, irrespective of our religion, ethnicity, geographical location and political affiliation, to also team up to make sure that we fight against, these, enemies of, human beings, enemy of Nigerians, because they have destroyed our reputation, our names, and therefore we need to do everything possible to ensure that we bring sanity to the system. The system of governance, the way it has been run in the past, has to change. You cannot allow people who have looted the country to come and be the one that will be imposed for election, So Nigerians basically didn't have any alternative, especially in the previous election, because there was no electoral transparency, and there are no, many people who have integrity, who have the capacity, who are very patriotic, who are committed to Nigerian project. Only those people who trade, and mortgage the integrity of the country, that are the one that usually you find. But we have every responsibility to rise up now. We have, in the next 2 years now, before the next election, to ensure that we do not elect again those who, are being seen as corrupt, or people who are not patriotic, or people who want to divide us, using religion or ethnicity or geographical location, or even, political affiliation. I think we need, at this stage, of our life in Nigeria, we need committed Nigerians that are patriotic, that are honest, that are committed, that have the capacity, that have the patriotic zeal to be able to galvanize effort and energy of every one of us to make sure that we fight corruption. It is not about, one agency of government or Mr. President.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. This charge to all Nigerians is quite commendable. But then now let's talk about the National Assembly. The National Assembly, we all know, has been charged with the responsibility to act as an oversight to other arms of government, as you can say. So why would you say the National Assembly is kind of missing these leakages that we're seeing?
Well, you have this problem of, like I earlier on, alluded, the election in most cases, are not the true representation of the Nigerian people. People who have, suspected money, they are the one who throw themselves and impose themselves on the people. So therefore, a lot of people that are credible, that have the capacity and the passion and commitment to be able to play important, role in governance, have been edged out, from participating in the politics. So that is why in many instances you have people who have been in the National Assembly or State Assembly that did not actually share the aspiration that Nigerians, have, or that want Nigeria to move forward, progressively, for better economic, and political, progress. So that is one problem. The second problem has to do with the, of course, this corruption that we are talking about. A lot of people who have found themselves in the leadership position, what they are interested is how they can use the position they find themselves to enrich themselves, rightly or wrongly. So you have a primary responsibility of looting and stealing and diverting public funds from both, people in the executive and people in the legislature. So this is a serious issue. That's why you cannot find effective and responsible oversight, from many of the legislators. However, we know that there are other legislators who are also very committed, very patriotic, but the system is also working against them. If you, as a National Assembly member or a State House of Representative, House of Rep in your state, if you want to really be upright and you want to really discharge your legislative and constitutional right to be able to carry out your duties, you are going to face serious challenges even from within your own colleagues. So we need a lot of people that share that aspiration of actually doing the right thing in both the State House of Assembly and the National Assembly, as well as even in the other public offices, so that we can have army of Nigerians that are shared, that share, the same aspiration, the same value, the same, integrity to be able to carry out their, work. So therefore, in this kind of circumstance, it is going to be difficult, for the National Assembly or for the State House of Assembly members to, in all honesty, carry out their legislative, responsibility, because many of them, they actually borrow money to contest election, and the next thing when they come is to see how they can recover from that, because of the nature in which the election, is being done in Nigeria. Very expensive. You have to have enough money. You have either have to steal a lot of money to contest election, or maybe a godfather has to provide a lot of money for you. The system is such that it enables people to actually be tempted to be corrupt, when they are elected, because what they want to do is to recover all the millions and billions they've spent during the election campaign. So until we begin to check that and change that kind of scenario and allow only people with integrity, with passion, with capacity, to be able to contribute to governance in Nigeria, that's how you can be able to have change. That's why you will be able to see that this personal interest that is drilling the governance, in local government, in the state and the National Assembly, or national level generally, it can only be addressed when you have such kind of responsible citizen. But when you have drop leaders whose their own is just to use the position to harass, intimidate, and abuse people in order to extort money from them, then it is not going to really, have the kind of check and balances that we want to see from both the executive and from the legislature. So I think, the National Assembly is facing a lot of challenges. Many of them, they are new in the National Assembly. As you know, the last election, a lot of new members came, and they are yet to familiarize themselves with the rudiment of legislative processes, and you really have to be committed to be able to understand how the legislature function and how you can carry out your responsibility as a legislator. Otherwise, you discover that you are not actually representing people, because ideally, you're supposed to be representing people. You're supposed to be making law for the good governance of the country. You're supposed to be working to ensure that you carry out effective and responsible oversight, and you're supposed to also be doing accountability, constituency accountability, which is what we usually refer as constituency outreach. But many a times, most of the legislators, either at the state or at the national level, they are not even connected with their electorate, who they are supposed to be accountable to them, because there is lack of understanding on that roles and responsibility. And many Nigerians also mistakenly think that, or some of the legislators, they think that they can play the role of an executive officer, promising before the election, promising all sorts of things that it is only the executive that has that kind of power to do. But as a legislator, you carry that burden. You say you want to do everything, and when the time comes, you find out that you cannot be able to do that, and then therefore you are dodging from your constituent because you promised them all sorts of things that is not within the purview of your own responsibility as a lawmaker, either at the state or at the national level. And then the people, because of lack of ignorance also, they believe that the legislator should pay their marriage, should pay for their naming ceremony, should pay for their school fees, for their health care, because the system is not also working at the local government, at the state level. The executive arm of government is not also carrying its own responsibility. So therefore, some of the electorate, they believe that their lawmaker should also play that role. But in an ideal thing, if there's understanding of the division of labor and roles and responsibility of each arm of government, we shouldn't be having this kind of confusion that we're having. And that is why we are appealing to the government to make use of the National Orientation Agency in terms of public awareness, public education. The National Orientation Agency, they have branches in all local governments in Nigeria, and they speak all the languages. So let them start use them to do public education, because we in civil society, we have constraint. We cannot be everywhere. We have limited human and financial resources to be everywhere, and our role is to complement. We cannot substitute government. So it is important that we make use of our institutions that are supposed to help in terms of creating awareness, and also making people really to be more committed, more accountable to the people,
to do all of that.
Exactly.
That's a very nice one.
Yeah.
And then as we've noticed, the judiciary has not been spared from these assertions. The judiciary has been accused of its slow pace in the delivery of most of the judgments and all of that, and that has affected corruption. Do you share the same view?
Absolutely. From all what we have been seeing, the judiciary, has been one of the major contributor to, either supporting or allowing corruption to strive. Because when some corrupt people are being given perpetual injection that they should not be arrested, they should not be, even interrogated, you are actually, giving room that corruption should really strive. In this country, we have seen judgment that has been given to some of the people that have been accused of corruption that they should not be even asked caution, not even arrest. And we have seen how, for example, the former Delta State governor was exonerated in Nigerian judiciary, but he went to London and he was prosecuted there and even jailed. So there are so many instances that shows that really the judiciary has actually compromised, and they need to do very quick action to restore their integrity and confidence on the Nigerian people, and even outside Nigeria, so that they can actually clean the either the perception or the established fact that they are actually helping corruption to strive in Nigeria. So I think the government must work closely with both the judiciary, the National Assembly, and of course the executive, as well as Nigerian people, to make sure that we actually stem this corruption, because it's a canker. It's a cancer that has actually eaten into the fabric of our society. Our young people, they don't know nothing except how to find ill-gotten money now, because they have even been blocked from getting legitimate even money. You cannot get admission except you bribe. You cannot get job except you bribe, or your father is big man, or your relation is a big man or big woman in this country. So that is why all this agitation that you are seeing by the young people, it is the frustration, it is the manifestation of the frustration and anger they have, that you have politicians you know that before you become a councillor or a member of the assembly at the state or at the national assembly, you are known to have only one house, but after 1 year you begin to have houses all over. So definitely young people are frustrated, and that's why it is easy for people to manipulate them to come and say, look, the only solution is to balkanize Nigeria, and they will believe because they have no hope, they have no exemplary leader to see. But we believe that with the conscious and sincere effort of the government at state, local government, and national level, we can begin to redirect the energy of youth, to more productive ways, instead of wasting the youth, energy for violence, for religious, crisis, or ethnic, thing, or even this agitation of trying to balkanize Nigeria, because we do not think that is a solution to the problem. As long as we can not address the issues of injustice, lack of equal opportunity, fairness, and also different democracy, let us have electoral transparency in the system, and let us also have accountability from the elected official. I think we can begin to see that democracy is the best option as against what people are thinking, of trying to turn democracy into an avenue or a vehicle of looting.
Okay, that's a very true one. And then finally, I'd like to ask, most people have, and as you've also stated earlier on, that the fight against corruption should be more of a movement than it is right now. What ways and what measures do you think this can take?
Yeah, already just we've been discussing with the different anti-corruption agencies and some like-minded civil society organization that are interested in the fight against corruption, and we will have mapped out strategy of ensuring that first we engage our young people in the base in the tertiary institutions, and even from really secondary school up to the university, engage them productively, show them the positive side of not being associated or involved in corruption or corrupt practices. Second, we need to engage with our community leaders, because some of these politicians, they also go to these community leaders and then they give them all sort of recognition, chieftaincy, and what have you. So if we can engage the community leaders, also engage the religious leaders. Ordinarily, religious leaders are supposed to be preaching against corruption and corrupt people. But unfortunately, because the corruption has eaten everybody, even the religious institutions now are being used by some of the corrupt people to come and play politics there, of trying to say, okay, this man is our own or this woman is our own. So even though he is corrupt or she's corrupt, there will not be any action or sanction against him by the religious institutions. So we think, in order to address this, we need to get these religious leaders also come together to remember that their primary responsibility is to also preach against evils, is to preach against corruption, looting, stealing, and diversion of public, funds, and also to preach against violence, and also preach for fairness, equity, justice, and if they can be able to do that, you will have discovered that many of these, corrupt elements, they will have no option than to also be, submissive to the right thing to do. Then I think, also another set of people that we need to engage, is of course is the media. A lot of journalists also, they are victim of this, corrupt, tendency. Some, of the journalists, even though the media in our constitution is even mentioned as one of the key important agencies to actually educate and enlighten people. Unfortunately, many of the people in the media, especially the social media, they find they are doing something that is entirely different, and I think we need to work with the all the media, especially the both the electronic print out and as well as the social media, to be able to understand the need to make sure that we discourage, or rather we stop giving protection for corrupt people or corruption, in the name of cover up or in the name of not really, exposing those kind of corruption. So, and if we are able to also, get, many of the professional association, for example, the accountant, because all this fraud that you see is done with the connivance of professional bodies. You cannot steal money if there's no collaboration with some of these professional people. So if we can get accountant association, if we can get lawyers, if we can get to the media, like I mentioned, you would have discovered that there's no way any corrupt person can survive in this country, because every corner he or she will be exposed. The religious leaders will not tolerate you. Community leaders will not tolerate you. The professional association that you go and give them money to go and defend you in the court, they will not go, because they have integrity and they have conscience that they will not go and sell their people and their country because of what you are going to gain from him or her. The same thing also, if you have professional accountants, they will not be able to help you siphon the money. The bankers, if you also work with them, you would have discovered that there will not be any way that the corrupt people will steal the money and bring to the bank, for it to be transferred out. So you need to work with different category of people in the country to be able to deal with this corruption. And I think it is possible, because virtually everybody is crying, everybody is suffering. You don't have light, you don't have potable drinking water, you cannot afford public school, you cannot afford public healthcare system in the country. Everything is left and upside down. So there's no gain in this corruption. There's no gain in associating yourself with corrupt people, because they are very self-centered people. One person will steal billions or trillion, and then now what they are even planning to do now, they have a one kangaroo bill in the National Assembly. They want to even give amnesty to looters, so you can loot as many trillion, millions, billions, and then they will forgive you for that. This is irresponsible bill that has been sponsored by people who are not really having the interests of this country, and we as an organization, we are mobilizing Nigerians to rise against that kind of bill in the National Assembly currently.
Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate this charge. This charge goes a long way to the fight against corruption. We really appreciate it. Thank you for coming into the studio.